We are so privileged to have with us today Dr. Kamel Hothi, who really impressed me so much with her wisdom and her insight that she gained over all of her years of experience. She will be talking today about the future of work and especially inclusion as a driver of authentic sustainability at work. And Dr. Kamel has been breaking glass ceilings in the banking world for over 4 decades, pioneering initiatives, including a new blueprint for corporate charity partnerships and volunteering. She's achieved these successes despite the struggles, discrimination, and gender imbalance faced throughout her career. Now ranked in the top 100 most influential Black, Asian, and minority ethnic leaders in the UK, she was awarded an OBE for services promoting diversity and banking. She serves as special advisor to the Queen's Commonwealth, and she's also a Meaningful Business 100 ambassador, serving on the boards of numerous organizations. Kamel will explore in a session the importance of creating inclusive and diverse teams, and she relates her journey as an Asian woman in the corporate world to where she is today. Good afternoon, Kamel. It's wonderful to have you here with us at our Inspired conference, and thank you for making the time to share some of your very valuable experience with our audience today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really feel humbled that you feel that we could have this conversation and I might be able to add some value. So thank you very much.
We would like to explore, we're going to explore today the whole question of inclusion and authentic sustainability and the importance of being authentic and, of course, being inclusive. And I thought we could kick off by asking you, how do you view the term inclusion in today's workplace? Do you have a very broad definition? Do you think it's just limited to race or gender, or are there other factors involved as well?
Thank you for that question. To be honest, I think having gone through something that I'm very passionate about, which has been inclusion and diversity, but where we are now, for me, the word inclusion means everybody. And I'm talking about everybody, no matter what color, what background, what race, what culture, because everyone has a story. And that story could be even mental health, it could be race, it could be abuse, families, whatever that might be. So it's actually, how do we make a workplace that includes everybody, that everybody has a voice, that everybody feels that they can add value, regardless of the background they come from? And for me, that I think, certainly for the next generation, from my experience, that's what they're looking for. They want to be able to work for a company where they feel that they can actually be counted and their voice is counted, regardless of what their background might be.
That's great. I think we see this with the younger generation, as you've mentioned, the Greta Thunbergs of the world, the Gen Zs wanting to have more a voice and wanting to work for companies with a sense of purpose. So given that explanation and that definition and insight into inclusion, do you think leaders should be intentional about, when they go about building teams? And what difference does this inclusive team make to the company? Is there a business case for inclusion?
Well, first of all, the business case has been out there for decades. From McKinsey's reports, the EY reports, the Ruby McGregor-Smith report in the UK, there's been so much research done that demonstrates that having a diverse workforce, having diverse teams, having that creativity around the table adds up to 30% to the bottom line. But I'm sorry, why then doesn't it happen? If I were to say to my husband, we have our own property company, that I've got something here that would add 30% to our business, he would actually chop my arm off for it. So why doesn't it happen? it has been recorded, and I certainly, my experience running a number of projects where actually I have that inclusive thinking, people from different backgrounds. And when I talk about backgrounds, I'm not just talking about, as I said, race or culture or sexuality, but also seniority. So when I read, ran the Asian strategy across the banking industry, or when I led the 250th anniversary, even as marking a milestone for a company, what would that look like? By inviting people from all levels of the company, from different divisions, different backgrounds. That collaboration, I think, was a success, why we became so successful. Having different mindsets around the table helps you break down barriers, helps you different type of thinking. Otherwise, you'll come up with the same solutions, with the same outcomes, because you're all coming from the same thinking process. So
and
absolutely. Sorry.
Sorry. I wasn't sorry. We'll just edit this bit out. I wasn't sure. Yeah. I didn't realize that you were still talking.
Did I? Sorry, maybe that one. Did I? I think I'd like to say that one again. I think.
Okay, let's redo this one.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you want me to ask the question?
Yeah.
Okay, so Kamel, do you think that leaders should be intentional about building inclusive teams? So, does it have an impact on the go-to-market strategy, on the bottom line of the company? And in a world where innovation is so important, how would this be a driver for a leader to decide that building diverse teams are important?
That's such an important question, and one that has been around for decades. We've seen how many reports have been done, how much research has been done, whether it be the McKinsey report, the EY report, and several others, that actually demonstrates that having a diverse workforce adds back up to 30% to the bottom line. But it's still not happening. And I can't get my head around that. Why not? If we've got all of these reports, yes, I think there's two different things that are going on here. One is actually that this is too hard to do, or why should I do it? I mean, we all want to be recognized for our own quality of work. Everyone agrees that. Nobody wants to be promoted because of your color or your sexuality or your race. However, if it demonstrates that actually having different types of individuals around that table when you're doing a project, or when you're designing something, or you're trying to go to market, my gosh, surely it makes sense to have people of not just, we're talking about race and color and sexuality or disability, but also seniority, people from the front line, people from the middle management, people from the top, because when you're designing something, they are your biggest strength. They are your customers, they're your advocates. So surely you want that innovation around the table. You want that different type of thinking so that you can get your product to market even quicker and faster, and actually not having to make any constant reviews, because you've got that spread of color around that table. And when I mean color, I'm talking about the general color inclusion. And if that 30%, if that diverse report isn't making any sound sense and it's still not happening, then I think one has to step back and ask why. Is it because those people that select those teams, invite teams, if you still have the same individuals that look like you, speak like you, surely the outcomes will always be the same, old saying. And that's fine if that's how you want to grow. But my gosh, if you want to go faster and you want to be more relevant to the people around you, to your customers, therefore you've got to have that voice around that table.
In your own, that's so true, and in your own experience with all your corporate experience and your own business experience, have you seen this as a reality in your own ventures and your own companies?
Absolutely. I've got a couple, I suppose. So when I was, I'm in the banking industry, as you can see in my profession, that's where I was. And we were part of a merger. So I was helping the group operating model and the culture across these two organizations come together. And it was when I was catapulted into the head office environment, I really saw the lack of diversity. But I'm also married to an entrepreneur who's constantly saying access to finance was difficult, that my bank was a bit too British, and the way that the relationship managers reached out to the community didn't understand the community. So he felt constantly being undermined and actually belittled. And so I'm a great believer in trying to help the corporation say, you know, what's in it for them? Why would they want to reach out to the community? So when I realized and did some research, realized that the actual lack of products, lack of cultural understanding, the way that we marketed to them, that, you know, how did we actually communicate to them was so poor. But actually the cake was big enough and the sectors it was growing was exactly how the bank wanted to actually reach out to. So there was the business case. And so presenting that back to the board and saying, look, you know, this is the market, this is the sectors that are growing in it. Would you want a share of it? Yes, please. But actually, we're not going to get it until we improve our cultural knowledge, until we look at our products, until we look at our marketing campaigns. And I'm proud to say that with that thinking, I was able to bring together minds, different minds across the table, look at our products, look at our marketing campaigns, managed to take on an agency that was quite boutique, that understood the market. And from being the bottom of the pecking order, we became leaders in the market within 4 years. Purely having that opportunity to really brainstorm, to step back and say, actually, yes, there's merit here that we want to be, you know, this actually is a market that we want to win, but how do we do it ethically? How do we do it authentically? And being able to have somebody, thankfully, coming from the community, I was able to be their voice within the company. I was able to bring that thinking and that expertise and that knowledge around the table. And that collaboration, I think, was really what made it really one of the most successful campaigns across the organization. And it was a win-win for everyone. Win-win for the company, that we obviously won market share, but also for the community who said access to finance was difficult. So here at the first time they were having access. So actually, how do we collaborate? How do we bring this great innovation to the table where actually you can bring the voice to the table? So that was one. Then there was another with the banking crisis in 2008. You know, it was a huge cultural shock. You know, we was one of the strongest banks and we had to rescue somebody else and we went down with it. So we had to be rescued. 150,000 staff overnight were worried and actually, you know, really lost pride and trust within the company. So did customers. Once again, using those tools of actually how do we collaborate? What is it that really would actually help people instill that pride again? How do we actually help customers rebuild that trust in the company? And actually, we've been around for 250 years. How do we actually say, yes, we've had our ups and downs, we've made our mistakes, being honest, being authentic, being emotional, showcasing actually, you know what, this is what we've done over 250 years. Giving our people the voice, their opportunity to actually collaborate, their opportunity to actually say, what can you do for the company? I know it sounds so cheesy, but that collaboration, that authenticity, that's what helped us really, I feel, turn the ship around, paid the government back and became independent again.
Those are two amazing business cases for inclusion. So one has to ask yourself, why is it not happening more? And what can be done to raise awareness with companies of the importance of inclusion?
I think there's two reasons here. For me, over my experience of 40 years, watching and observing and being part of the story myself as I encountered it as well. The first one, I think, lies squarely on the shoulders of what I call the captains of industries, the leaders, the CEOs, the chairmen who appoints the CEOs, the exec boards, the middle management, all the way down. So why isn't it moving? Now, as we know, the majority of those individuals are still, how can I put it without being too controversial, white male. And until that changes, that thinking's not going to change. And it's not that they're doing it deliberately. I don't feel that racism or any cultural biases are very much overtly in your face, but actually they feel that, yeah, they're ticking boxes. That's what I call it. They are delegating it down to their HR teams, their talent teams, their inclusion and diversity team, their product teams, because they know that, yes, this is something that they have to tackle, but they delegate it down. But because they carry on them behaving in the manner that they do, their direct reports carry on behaving in the manner that they do, because their boss is more interested in the bottom line products. They're more interested in the profit and loss, not so much of the soft stuff. That's over there, that's CSR, that's inclusion and diversity. Just make it happen. But I need to focus on this. And so their direct reports continue to focus on this, and that filters all the way down. For me, it's not until these captains of industries, these CEOs, these execs walk out of their office, really, I mean really go and look at their people, listen to their people, put themselves in the shoes of their people. How many Kamels are working for you that you don't even know what's going through their minds or the challenges they're facing in your organization? How can you then empathize with your people? How can you show your vulnerability and actually I'm sure they have their own stories, but where do they find the courage? Actually, you know what? I can share my story as well. I feel for decades, we've created this persona, what a CEO, what an exec's image looks like. Somebody who's strong, somebody who has to have all the answers, somebody who has to be dictatorial. But I feel now is the time to take that mask off, and actually where that strength of vulnerability was seen as a sign of weakness, it's the biggest strength possible. You showing your vulnerability to your people is the strength that we need. To be able to empower them, people to feel, actually, oh my gosh, he's got human. I will follow this person. I'll walk over coals for him. Then vice versa, the second part to that question is from the bottom up. What is stopping you? These glass ceilings that we talk about, these biases that we talk about, but what's stopping you? Look in the mirror, ask yourself, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are the things I want to change about myself? How do I get my voice across that I matter? I have an idea, I have a purpose. What is your purpose? Once you have your purpose, that fear will disappear. And if you encounter a line manager that doesn't listen to you or doesn't hear your voice, find a way around it. Don't get bitter. Navigate, have strength, have courage. And I do feel that's that way, you know, from the bottom up, you finding your purpose, what's stopping you versus people coming from the top down. That's, I think, will be the way we get over this.
Great answer. You've mentioned a few words that we've noticed that are becoming themes across our, you know, all the interviews in this conference. Vulnerability, empathy, compassion, meaning, ownership. And I think these are all very, very important terms to really unpick and to focus on moving forward. We can't live in a blame culture. We have to reach a point where we have to take ownership and responsibility as well. And I guess that's where this whole concept of authenticity is strengthened, because you are then taking ownership and you are putting, being vulnerable. And I think that's so important. Kamel, another area that I find quite interesting, or a question I'd like to ask you, is around Asian families. Sometimes in Asian families, and not only Asian families, but an experience that I've had working in the East for so many years is that certain careers are being, sort of prioritized: doctor, lawyer, accountant, engineer. Does that play a role in inclusion when, families regard certain roles as important? Is there a gap in the market as a result of that?
I think you've uncovered something that is absolutely true, certainly in my generation, when as a migrant, your first priority is really to earn money. So to be able to help your family out of poverty to move on. So a career wasn't really the in thing, it was really how to make money. And that basically, and also there was a lot of difficulties and glass ceilings in my generation. And so I saw that, many parents like myself see that actually the way out of poverty is through education and having a really good education. So unfortunately, we did push our children. We did navigate them and saying, and the only careers that we know are like doctors, lawyers, things that are general academic stuff that actually are seen as respectable, but also that could earn income. And so we were putting a lot of pressure on our children. Those are the careers that we understand are respectable. We didn't really see value in creative arts. We didn't really see value in things like the military, even though coming from a Sikh background, military was one of our core strengths. We were the people out there, the brave soldiers out there. But actually, when it came down to time, we didn't encourage our children to go into the military. And so, yes, I think there is a generation that have been pushed down into these very, what I call academic subjects, and probably haven't been fulfilled. Those children are trying to please their parents, and I'm sure there's a lost generation that are just not really fulfilled because they're doing a role that really is something that has been forced upon them. However, I do feel the next generation are much more now vocal. They are more westernized because they've been brought up in Western countries, especially if you have been brought up in the Western country. But even in the Asian, if I look at India or the Asian community back home, those children are much more vocal, they're much more brave, and they're able to articulate to their parents, no, actually, that's not what I want. This is the field I want to go into. I want to go into creative arts. I want to go into drama. I want to go into journalism, and I want to go into the military. And because they are now courageous to actually have that dialogue with their parents, unfortunately, it's still an uncomfortable dialogue because parents aren't quite convinced. And so that's something we as a community have to go back and actually review. And there's a lot of fallout, which is something that I'm really passionate about. How do we have this collaboration? How do we have a dialogue that doesn't always end up being, where families are torn apart because of those decisions? But I think slowly those children are now going into those fields, which it'll take time. And we'll break glass ceilings, and there are a lot of glass ceilings for those young people to break through because there's hardly anybody that looks like them in those fields. But I hope that parents like me now actually, when my son went into architecture, he wanted to go into a different field of architecture. And so we took a tough decision when he changed his career halfway. Which is difficult for his parents, but actually it's the right thing to do. He's so fulfilled. He loves what he does now.
And maybe as you're talking through this, I'm also thinking that with these changed mindsets, where I don't view myself as belonging to a specific job or a specific layer in an organization, if I start seeing myself as a mobile, a person who, like many young people today, will most likely not just have one job, but might have many different careers as they progress and as life is rapidly evolving, that they would also be more willing to speak up, that they can be more, have stronger opinions in these diverse teams. Instead of just waiting for others. I mean, you spoke earlier about it, there's also responsibility from the bottom up. So it's not just being given the opportunity to speak, but it's having the confidence, the self-belief, the ability to communicate and have your own vision for the future. So I guess it's part of that change that is necessary, and especially with young people.
Absolutely. For me, I think when I speak to young people, when I mentor young people, I like to talk about purpose. So, and I know that's a cliche word these days, and companies, oh, our purpose is this, and they have a very nice, tidy narrative. But actually, I'm really talking about purpose. What drives you? What makes you want to jump out of bed? And that's a very difficult question if you really think hard. Sometimes when you're beginning of your career, you don't know, I want to be a banker, or I want to be a lawyer, or I want to be a journalist. One just says, well, actually, I don't know what I want to be. That doesn't mean that you are going to be left behind, or you have but actually, what's important to you then? Is it that you like to create things? Is it that you like fairness? Look at other things that make you tick. And once start. So for me, I didn't know, actually. I got by default. I came into banking. It's not a career that I wanted. I wanted to go into more into childcare, but ended up default because that was the job available for me. So why did banking become my 40-year career path, even though when I had an opportunity to leave, I didn't? Because within banking, there are so many layers and opportunities to actually do what I needed to do. I realized actually my purpose, I like to be liked, and I like to collaborate. I like to get to root cause of problems. So actually I applied that with the roles that I was given. So I was being fulfilled. I like to find, all this thing about Six Sigma. I'm sorry, I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to those things. It really makes me excited. So actually, what is your purpose? What drives you? So if you don't know, if it's not a career, what are those things that actually, because once I truly believe, once you know your purpose, the fear disappears. The fear disappears. So when I, started the Asian strategy, when I looked at my community, my husband was saying access to finance was difficult. That became my purpose. I wanted to give my community an opportunity. Why were they being left behind? These great entrepreneurs, that negativity in the media about, immigration's bad. No, it's not. I know what these great people are doing, adding value to the bottom line. That became my purpose. I wanted to raise their voice. I wanted to demonstrate and showcase what the great stuff that they were doing. But how could I do it? Well, actually, I want to play that role. I want to be able to I work in a bank. How could I give them access to finance? What was my purpose within that company? And I think when you are able to find that and stitch it together, that emotional intelligence as well as your purpose, then I think it gives you that boost, that courage. That was for the first time I didn't feel my gender. I didn't feel that I hadn't gone to these great universities with the people around the table, that I actually wasn't a strategist. I hadn't done marketing. But that all flew away. I was a collaborator, and I was able to bring people. I had no ego. I wanted to build something. So I hope that gives something, going back to that answer, is find your purpose, find what drives you, and that will hopefully get you on the path of where you want to go to.
Absolutely. And I think it's again that shift we are seeing even in the education world, away from a content-driven approach to a process-driven approach. And instead of chasing the degree, chase the meaning. And I guess people who find themselves at a loss now because of the COVID crisis, finding that they've lost their jobs, or that companies are downsizing or closing down. If you have that sense of purpose, you will find another way to that. So it's not just about your job title or your position in the world, but it's about what is the difference that you want to make. And that is a fantastic message for young people and older people too. It's never too late, right? To look back and say, okay, this is the T-junction I find myself. So what is it that I really want to achieve in my life? Kamel, if we look at the world of work and we look at inclusion, there are certain careers or certain fields, let's say not careers, but certain areas of work that still is more segregated than others. Technical careers, some professional roles, like if you take Silicon Valley, if you look at the software industry. Do you think something, or what do you think could be done to change those perceptions and change the balance in those industries?
You know, I've been challenged this. I was helping the construction industry around the round table because they were also saying, you know, how do we change the mindset that when you look on the building site, majority, obviously it's men. And then you look at the military and the army, you know, that's majority are men. And you know, so I think this is where there are some, obviously because there's physical strength, you know, that's what's required. But actually outside of the physical strength, you know, apart from that, which one can also, you know, build up one's strength, but, you know, there might be, you know, we, at the end of the day, there is a difference between, you know, males and females via our DNA, which can't be eradicated. However, as an industry, whether it's, let's say, construction or military, whatever that might be, my gosh, when you think about looking at projects, when you think about strategies being developed, when you think about, you know, when you're looking at conflict, surely you want that different diversity around that table. You want that creativity around that table. So how do you actually go and advertise that you are a company, that you have all these different layers and opportunities within your company, rather than the one image that maybe is that you've always portrayed in military has been very much on, you know, the going out in conflict and being combatant, and that drives female, whether you're, you know, feminist, and you know, you don't want to do that. But actually, how many other roles are there in the military, from being doctors to strategists to conflict, you know, to actually avoid conflict? And the same from the construction companies, architects, designers, mindsets, models, you know, where does all this take? So it's an opportunity, I think, to, when it comes to communication of your industry, how is it being communicated? What does the image look like outside? Where are your role models within your companies that can talk the walk, that can be the face of your poster boy, your poster girl, or poster female, or poster disability, whatever it might be, of all total inclusion, that you break down those barriers? Because as companies, I can't believe there's one industry that only requires one thread of, you know, diversity in their fabric. I'm sure there's different fabrics of diversity that's required. But so one has to look back. How do you communicate it? How you're reaching out? What's the image you're portraying? And then how do you actually break those down and then start from there?
That's great. And I think it's also about the fact that technology is changing. And with the changes in technology, things like, for example, physical strength might be something that's taken off the table. You know, think of drone warfare or robotics, you know, in industry. So, but I think the one thing that you've also mentioned that's really important is that we're also not trying to say everybody is equal and the same, or equal is maybe the wrong word to use, but that we should also value the differences that people have, you know. So often you hear people focusing on, if you take gendered, you know, male, female role, you know, we are exactly the same, but we bring our unique strengths and abilities to the table. So, you know, it doesn't mean that we're saying there is no difference. It means let's bring the difference to the table.
Absolutely, and that goes back to my earlier points, but, you know, the recent virus, overnight companies have had to change the way they work. You know, I remember in the industries, we had a project plan to look at flexible working, and we had a project plan to look at how do we become more agile with, you know, video conferencing, but it's like over the next 5 years. We'll invest that later on. But actually, when the thing hit the fan, everyone overnight, the budgets were found, everyone had to be changing their way. But actually, you know, it's been a tough, everybody on the global scales have had to go through this. And it's not been easy being in lockdown and being feeling isolated. But one of the positive outcomes is to help companies with huge data. Actually, do we need all of our offices? Do people still need to come into these central big offices? Could we save that money and allow people work from home? And that in return, I think then all of a sudden, you've opened up a market for individuals that could be carers, individuals who thought they couldn't go into a career because they couldn't travel into work, that couldn't do a job because it would require that, distance. All of a sudden, you've opened up a whole shed load of opportunities of individuals. So when you talk about equal, actually now really is equality. You could be sitting at home, being a carer for somebody, but actually still adding value to whatever that might be. So for me, that's one sense. But the other one is, when I go back, one used to get, when you look at graduates or you look at people going through universities, they were paid more, especially if they come from the Cambridges and the Oxford universities, thinking that their qualification warranted that, level of salary. But really, honestly, when I look back and, I'm so proud of what I was able to design and develop and help, I didn't come through those universities. My passion, my commitment came through here. My passion came through an idea that I represented a community. I was able to understand the community much better and bring that thinking to the table. So actually, how do we recognize diverse thinking? How do we recognize contribution that actually could be emotional contribution, could be a different type of contribution rather than the generic academic contribution around the table? And that's where I think then we've got that's where I feel the quality needs to be balanced a bit more going forward in the future.
And it will be very interesting to see a few years into the future when we look back at this really turbulence that we find ourselves in, is how has this actually really caused a shift for the positive. And brings us back to our conference. It really is an attempt to look at the future, the possibility, have a positive conversation around what could be, rather than looking back with regret at what was. So thank you for those points. They're so meaningful. Can we just go back very quickly to sustainability? So how would you, and I know you've talked about that, but perhaps we can dig into this a little bit deeper. How does diversity support a company's sustainability? And maybe look at the people's interpretation of the word sustainability, which is often misinterpreted.
Well, first, the word sustainability automatically, I think, generally is contributed to climate, or how a company is being sustainable in that context. But however, when we look at what's happened recently or in the past about the virus, and we've seen how many brands haven't been able to survive, and one has to now go back. And, I always say when something hits the fan, the best time is to press the pause button. How do you press the pause button and step back and saying, actually, what could we have done better to be sustainable? And when I mean sustainable, I'm not just talking about actually what you do as a company for the climate, which is absolutely important, but actually the future of your company, that's what I'm talking about, sustainable. How does one actually be prepared for curveballs that will hit us? And we've seen, whether it be the financial crisis, we've seen now the virus, what's the next curveball that's going to hit the global? How can we be prepared as a company and be sustainable? How do we ride through that? Is that always money? But it's actually, how are we agile? How are we actually, have we got people, have we got what I call manpower that is actually, women power, I don't want to be gender, but have we got the right have we got the right, the diverse inclusion of wealth of knowledge across our organization, that when something hits the fan, and as a company, you are now, you know, having to very quickly think of a creative way to actually ride that wave. You don't know what that wave's going to be. You don't know what that's going to look like, because we've seen it now. As I said, it could be the financial crisis, it's a virus, or what's the next virus, whatever that might be. You're going to have to, when we say sustainability, the more inclusive your DNA, the more color fabric of the people that you employ, they are the ones going to come up with the conclusion.
I had an idea as you were talking, Kamel, to you know, in companies, you mentioned the innovation labs that many companies create now. They have a division, an innovation division, and many CEOs are very proud of this part of their organization. And at the same time, maybe they think of diversity in their senior management teams. So two core things that really emerge from what you've been saying is innovation cannot just sit within, or diversity cannot just sit within one particular division. It needs to be spread throughout, basically in the DNA of your company. And that this diversity is not just at certain tiers in the organization, but that agility is there so that leaders and people who are frontline workers can also have the opportunity to communicate, share, discuss, and have those ideas flow up and down all the time. So I think that would be quite an interesting thing for a leader who finds himself at this point saying, how can I build in more diversity into my company, to consider all the various forms of diversity, or where and how that could be built in. So a question that I have for you is have you found in your experience that there've been sort of false attempts made at creating diversity? People that will say, oh, we have it, but it's not really, it doesn't really work, or it's just on the surface?
To be honest, that's why I get frustrated. And no disrespect, I think the intentions are there and have been there and are much better than, going back decades ago. I don't believe there are any leaders who deliberately don't want to include diversity in their organizations. Their intentions are there.
So, Kamel, have you seen, or in your experience found, and I know that you've alluded to this earlier, but that there are misguided attempts to building inclusive work environments?
I don't think there's any CEO or board or company that don't want to include diversity. But I call them tick boxes. They've ticked a box, they've delegated it down to their HR team or their talent team or their D&I team or their CSR team, and they feel it's over there. And what they're focused on is very much the profits and loss of the company. And I think they are very much misplaced. Because, when we look at Harvard University, there was a survey done that emotional intelligence was a key differentiator on true leadership. And Stanford University did another survey of CEOs, and 80% of CEOs said actually empathy was a key driver of profitability, reduces absenteeism, increases presenteeism in the workplace, because people feel that there's a collaborative approach in teams. So how do you bring all of this stuff that they, whether it's inclusion, whether it's CSR, whether it's volunteering, whether it's charity, into the board table and very much part of the strategic conversation? Because then you've got real, what I call, commitment. And that's how you move the dial forward. And it's until those captains of industry who appreciate that this is not someone else's problem, but yours, your responsibility, and you get emotionally engaged with that conversation, then it will move forward.
Okay. Kamel, thank you for sharing all this valuable insight. So let's dig in a little bit into your own personal experiences. So you were awarded an OBE 3 years ago, and that is an amazing accomplishment. Could you share a little bit about your personal journey and how that contributed maybe towards this passion that you have for inclusion?
Thank you. So just very quickly, I was actually born in India, and my parents are the survivors of the partition of India, Pakistan. My father's a civil engineer. He built one of the biggest dams in India and was recognized by Nehru himself. But then Britain asked the Commonwealth to come and help build Britain. So we decided to come here in the 60s. Landed in quite a racist environment, I would say, at that time, with the Enoch Powell and all of these very negative speeches, very similar to what's happening now with the Black Lives Matter campaign. It feels a bit deja vu to me. That resulted in basically mostly everyone coming in here finding jobs in factories and production, which is fine, but it just wasn't respecting my father's credentials. Basically, he had a chip on his shoulder, so he stopped me going on to further education. But I ended up having a job as a cashier in a bank. I speak several languages, and the community slowly heard that I was able to speak all these languages. And so my value started, I suppose, contributing a bit higher in the organization. So I started working really harder, started studying at night, became the first Asian bank manager, then jumped there to running about 160 branches. From there, I helped with the merger. I had an idea that I started developing in my own branches, and I call him my hero. One of these execs saw what I was doing. He came out to see what I was doing. And he said, right, come on, let's really expand it right across the group. So with his help, started doing that. And that's when I saw the lack of diversity across the organization as I was getting more senior. So I started the Ethnic Minority Network and Women's Network, but more asking myself, so what was stopping me, getting higher up the ladder? And as I was speaking at a conference once, there was somebody from the government who heard what I was saying and said, look, could you lead the task force for us to lead, we need to improve our supply diversity across procurement. And to be honest, I didn't know what she was talking about at that time, but I took on the risk. And 18 months later, it's the best white paper across government that really shaped the way that they procured contracts, but also became the bedrocks of the bid for the Olympic Games. We became headline sponsors for the Games as my company, and then that really boosted my confidence that I wanted to give back more. I'm married to an entrepreneur who's always, as I've explained before, saying access to finance was very difficult. So again, I did my business case, looked at how big the cake was, the sectors it was growing, and I spoke to my mentor who got me 20 minutes on the board. That's when I presented to the board. They loved it. But then the risk was they gave me 6 months to see if the idea had legs. But if it didn't work after 6 months, I might lose my job because they couldn't backfill it. But I took that risk and then designed my own cultural training courses, products, communications, award ceremonies, and it became a real win-win both for the community and the organization. We became leaders in the market, and from there I got headhunted to take it globally, and it was all fine until 2008, the banking crisis. We were asked to rescue another bank, and unfortunately took us down with it, but the new CEO asked me to stay on. Retired in 2017, and I'm helping Her Majesty Queen on the Commonwealth Trust Fund as an advisor, trying to really help the youth of the Commonwealth to really find their voice, to help social change in those communities. So working with Prince Harry to really shift the change. I'm also an advisor for Alzheimer's Society, where dementia is really close to my heart, especially in the BAME community where we don't really talk about mental health or dementia. I want to help break those glass ceilings. And I'm a non-exec on the company called TRC Lions. So that's sort of where I've got to now. But my personal life, as I said, I wasn't allowed to go on to further education. And at the age of 19, I had an arranged marriage and met my husband literally on our wedding night. And I now live in this very strict household. So my story is actually I lived these two lives. So this very male-dominated industry that I ended up in, breaking glass ceilings and trying to work my way up, versus at home as a woman not really having much voice, and having that split personality. I did have my own mental health pressures with my second child when I had postnatal depressions. Wanted to sort of literally end it all when it just got too much. But my passion to make a difference in the world outside where my voice did matter helped me slowly give me the confidence at home to become the woman I needed to be in order to project and help my children. So I still live within the family, but I like to now talk about to my community, how can women have a voice? How can we really be the change makers that we want to be without having to, rock the boat in our culture or whatever that might look like. So that's very much my story. I still try to talk, looking at these two worlds, talk about it, mentor young girls, mentor men. I've got two sons. How can there be different husbands, and bring these worlds together? So that's what I do now at the moment.
Wow, that is very impressive. What a life, diverse life and diverse experiences that you've had. No wonder that you are so passionate about inclusion on all these various levels. Could you give us a very short snippet about the TLC Lions? That sounds very interesting.
Yeah, I'm so proud of that company. So I met Gyan Power, who's the founder of TLC Lions. He's a young man that used to work for Deutsche Bank and then PwC, and everything was fine. He was a graduate there. Unfortunately, in 2015, his father, he's married, his mother's white and his father's is Sikh. He's a businessman, went to India, he got murdered out there. And you can imagine his world was rocked, and the reaction of a couple of the leaders in the company who were very empathetic versus some who weren't, basically pushed Gyan to start thinking, actually, why aren't we more emotional here in the corporate world? And then unfortunately, one of his colleagues also then took his own life in that same week, because he had a gambling addiction that nobody knew about. And so Gyan decided to leave the corporate world in 2017 to ignite this emotion back in the corporate world. We met the day before. Somebody said, well, Kamel could be a speaker for you and tell a story. But I connected with him on all levels. So I'm his non-exec. So we now, I'm proud to say, after 2 years, we've got about 180 companies that we help, both looking at their strategies on inclusion, well-being, leadership, mental health. And then my role is looking at strategy side of things, working with companies to really understand their challenges and holding their hands to move that dial. But then also through these wonderful individuals, we've interviewed about 300, and we've got about 25, very selective, people that look like you and me, but through the lens of inclusion and diversity. I coach them how to tell their story, but the more important thing, the so what question. How, hearing this person's story, what difference is it going to make for you? How relevant is it for you or your company? So that's what I do with them. And then every quarter, we bring about 30 of our clients through the sort of round table, Chatham House rules in Westminster, with the help of Baroness Werner, who's the United Nations Chair for Women. She's a colleague of mine, a friend of mine, and to really help these companies to sit around and challenge each other and say, why isn't it moving? So, my CEO is not engaged, but yours is. What did you do? Without this fear of it going back to their company. So that's what we do through TLC Lions.
Well, that's great. And I have to say, it's also a wish that I have for the Inspired Conference, that companies and individuals can also have an open dialogue about inclusion. And it will also be one of the channels that we are creating with the Headspace app, where diversity and inclusion will definitely be something that is really running across all 5 of the days. Kamel, do you have a take-home message for people, and also for people that might want to make use of your services in the future? So maybe a bit of advice, maybe something that, how could they reach out to you as a final message?
Well, I think so if you're starting out on your career, or you're starting out into looking for work, is, you know, my husband and I on our wedding night, we literally had this 5-year plan, but which I'm sure corporate you're all aware of. But actually, in that 5-year plan now, it has 5 years where asking those questions of where do you want to get to, what do you want to do, but underneath is also your personal life, because I don't think you can take one away from the other. So to be very honest with yourself, where do you see yourself both in career, but also in your personal life? So one can maneuver both of those together. But also from a young person going into work, be honest. What are your strengths? What are you passionate about? What do you want to drive? And stay true to yourself and be that voice so that you can actually, that will maneuver and push you forward. But then, you know, from the top down as leaders, whether you're a CEO or a chairman or an exec, do you really know your people? Can you really step out your comfort zone and step into the shoes of those that you employ and that you lead? And be empathetic and show your vulnerability, because that's the way to connect with those people. So it's looking down, really connecting, and bottom up, asking yourself what's stopping you. And then, you know, so far as myself is concerned, I love doing this sort of stuff. Obviously, there are companies that we do support. So anyone who wants to reach out to me on LinkedIn, who wants my services, more than happy to have that conversation, whether that's through me personally talking about this story in a bit more detail, or through TLC Lines. I'm more than happy to have both those conversations, but probably LinkedIn probably is the best way to connect with me.
Thank you very, very much for your insights and for the work that you've been doing. And the footprint that you've left in the corporate world. You know, as a woman, you've overcome many challenges, are a great role model for everybody who might feel excluded from whether it's race or color or sex or age. So thank you so much, Kamel, for this wonderful talk, and we're looking forward to continuing this community and collaboration and communication that we hope to kickstart through the Inspired Conference.
Thank you so much, and good luck. And I think you're doing a brilliant job. I love collaboration and actually bringing people together. I think is one of the beauty of what more we can do together. Collectively, we can do so much more. So thank you. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you so much, Kamel. Just stop the recording.